The warm-up is back, taking a look at the Toronto Raptors. Kings of the North, they certainly have been acting like it the last 14 games. All wins. You can see the numbers and how they look. 120 points per game, but more significantly, perhaps, their opponents' points, holding them to under 110 points per game. To dive a little deeper into the Toronto Raptors, we'd like to welcome in our guest, Josh Lewinberg, who covers the Raptors for our friends up at TSN. We appreciate you joining us here on the warm-up. Let's get right to it. How are they able, the Raptors, to keep continuing this success when bodies are going down, in and out of lineup? How is it possible?
Well, it's been a fun run, and the only through line between these 14 games is that there is no through line. They're doing it in different ways, and they're doing it, as Stephanie, as you mentioned, with different guys. Tonight's a great example. You get Kyle Lowry back, but now we find out Serge Ibaka is out with the flu. That's been the story all season long. They get somebody back, and somebody else comes out. But you look at this 14-game stretch, and I will point out that only 4 of the 14 wins have come against teams over 500. So the schedule has been kind, but as you guys know, you still have to play the games and win the games. Every team, even the good ones, will have off nights where their focus isn't there and you're just going to lose no matter what to whoever you're playing, good team, bad team, whatever. The Raptors haven't had those games lately, so I think this speaks to their consistency, their focus, and the fact that they've got guys all over the roster that are stepping up.
Kyle Lowry back in action tonight after leaving the last game early due to whiplash. What has he meant to this team? He has taken on quite the leadership role.
He has, yeah. I think there's that steadying veteran presence that he brings, and of course that applies to Marc Gasol and Serge Ibaka as well. But you look at all these young guys that are performing for the team right now. Undrafted rookie Terrence Davis being one of them. He started in place of Lowry the other day, and one thing that all those young guys mention is Lowry's leadership, what he brings in the room, and then I think the steadying presence on the court as well. And that's changed quite a bit over the years, because I think that was maybe the knock on him early in his career, as his leadership. He was bouncing around a bit, starting, coming off the bench, but as we've seen him grow on the court in terms of his skill set, his ability, what he brings to this Raptors team, we've also seen him mature off the court and become a really good, solid leader for them.
What's been interesting is when someone has to fill in for Kyle Lowry, they take on quite the role. You just mentioned Terrence Davis, but we saw Fred VanVleet really come into his own last season, and he has developed his own niche with this team. Explain how important he has become.
Oh, yeah, and what do those guys have in common? Terrence Davis, undrafted. Fred VanVleet, undrafted. The Raptors actually had 5 undrafted guys score in Saturday's win over Brooklyn. That's an ongoing theme with this team, is just finding the diamond in the rough, finding a player that was overlooked or undervalued for whatever reason and helping them develop into a contributor in the NBA. Pascal Siakam, a late first-round pick, now an all-star. You've got Norman Powell, a second-round pick, and then the undrafted guys that I mentioned. So I think, first of all, give the team credit, obviously the scouting staff, the development staff for helping to bring them along. But I think whenever we talk about it, we're doing a disservice if we don't give credit to the players themselves for putting the work in. And I think the common denominator that you see with all these undrafted guys, VanVleet and Terrence Davis among them, is that they've got that approach, that work ethic, the chip on their shoulder to go out and prove people wrong. And that's what they're doing right now, is they're proving a lot of people wrong.
Absolutely. Every single game, it appears they're proving everyone wrong. You brought up Pascal Siakam. We all knew how good he looked last season. I'm not sure anyone could have predicted he would have had this type of season this year. You're right there with the team, so maybe you have seen something that you can share with us that kind of clued you in.
Well, I think it's the work ethic more than anything else. The same thing that I was talking about with those other guys. I mean, those are the players you want to bet on. If you're going to be betting on a player, and the Raptors certainly did, giving Pascal Siakam a max extension just before the season, you want to bet on the guys that you know will work hard enough to reach their ceiling, whatever it is. And that's the great thing about Pascal Siakam. It seems like every time we put a ceiling on this guy and say, okay, well, this is how good he can be, well, he just blows right past that. And it makes sense. I mean, he was a late bloomer. He didn't start playing the game competitively until he was 16 years old. So he always says that he has to work even harder than everyone else because he's playing catch-up. You can just see he's so good about identifying the weaknesses in his game, the things that he has to work on, and he spends the time to turn those weaknesses into strengths. He was one of the worst three-point shooters in the league a few years ago, and now he's an above league average three-point shooter. Even after a game where he plays well, he points to things like, okay, foul trouble, maybe he should have played smarter, or maybe he should have been more aggressive in the third quarter. That's the attitude that you need to be a superstar in this league, and Pascal Siakam is a budding superstar in this league.
Nick Nurse, the head coach for this Raptors team, somehow he continues to get the best and the most out of his players. And we've talked about it already. Next man up, they take that mentality very seriously. What is it about Nurse and his coaching staff?
There's just a calmness about him, a presence that a lot of coaches don't have. I mean, it's a stressful job, it's a stressful league, but he does a really good job of focusing on the things that matter. If you're going to worry about something, worry about the things that matter and not the little details. I think that's sort of it's been contagious, and it's something that has helped keep this locker room together during a really difficult year in terms of the adversity they've faced. They've had a lot of hard luck this year, and hey, Raptors fans aren't going to complain because, of course, they were the beneficiary of some good luck last year on the way to the championship, but that's the basketball gods for you. They giveth and they taketh away. You just have to do the best you can with the cards that you're dealt, and the Raptors have done that this year thanks in large part to Nick Nurse and the coaching staff. 7 of their top 8 guys have already missed at least 10 games, but the one constant all year long, and yeah, you credit the guys from the top to the bottom of the roster, but the one constant has been Nick Nurse and the coaching staff. He's had them prepared for every single game, which is why, going back to what I was saying earlier, I think you see such a consistent level of focus here, and they haven't had an off night in almost a month. It's been a month or just less than a month since they lost to San Antonio on January 12th.
Very impressive, the 14-game win streak. They're looking to extend that tonight. Josh Lewenberg, we thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Stephanie.
All right, gentlemen, the Toronto Raptors, they keep doing it. How? Sam, we'll start with you because you're there a lot.
Well, defense. I mean, that's the thing. Everybody keeps looking at this team and surprised they're winning. But everything starts and it finishes with their defense. And that's the thing that Nick Nurse talks about. When guys fill in, when there's been injuries, they don't worry about the offense. He doesn't care. As long as you run the offense and move the ball and take good shots, think about it. Everybody's allowed to shoot. As long as it's your shot, just go play. But you have to be in tune to what they're doing defensively. You have to know their principles. And as long as you give the effort and play good, strong, solid team defense, then he's going to let you flow and play on offense.
What I also add to that, Sam said it best, is their defense. But I add is watching them, Sam and Steph, guys make you feel like they're in the play on the offside and the weak side. I saw OG Anunoby cut so hard, Sam, and the play wasn't for him.
No.
He took 2 people with him. Fred VanVleet came up, replaced him, pump fake, drove it, and he had a decent shot that he could have took. Me and you would have took, Sam, and he kicked it to the next guy, Terrence Davis, who shot a 3. That's having confidence in the guy that hasn't been around. Usually a guy who's been around like Fred, let me take this shot. They're unselfish. They set screens. They run. Pascal Siakam, we say button superstar. You don't see superstars run without the basketball like that.
They normally wait for it.
For somebody else to get a wide open look.
Right. It's been interesting. We talked about who is out. I mean, when you look at the 3 bodies, if you include Lowry, which we know he's in now, but he was out. Gasol, Lowry, and Powell combined 40 points. 14 rebounds, 12 assists, and they still continue to win.
Yeah, but look at the player development. Look at guys like Davis. Look at Fred VanVleet. Look at Chris Boucher, who was bagging groceries. I mean, when they get you there, look, one thing about Masai, when I was there the first time with him, and he was assistant general manager, the thing that impressed me about him was no excuses. I don't care who's hurt. I don't care what's going on in your life. When you come to that arena, and that ball goes up at 7 or 7:30, he expects you to do your job. And it's not in a bad way, a pressure way, but look, we're going to give you all the tools you need to be successful. But this is what they've done as good as any team in the league. They found the right guys with the right mental approach. They don't bring guys in and say, we're going to change you. No. Wayne Emery used to say this all the time. You're not going to change grown men that don't want to change. Yeah. You go get people who've already committed to the style in which you want to play, to have the work ethic, the mental toughness, the physical toughness. And then you put them in a system, and now they got good guys that are unselfish guys. So when you look at this basketball team, they don't have the superstars, but they got about, 5, 6 guys averaging double-figure points a game. So who are you going to key on come playoff time. Because either one of those guys, those 6 or 7 guys, can have a big night to beat you.
Tough decision. So Toronto is in the second position. Obviously, Milwaukee is well ahead of everyone, sitting at number 1 in the East. But when you look at the standings, is there anyone that Toronto should be weary of facing in the playoffs?
Not weary, but except Milwaukee. If I'm Toronto, I'm gearing up, and obviously Boston, Miami, Philly, Indiana. I would say that Miami-Toronto, because of the style of play, would be interesting to play. But I don't think Toronto, because of the confidence and the way they play, they should be worried about anybody except Milwaukee right now.
You know who could get them a game, and once they get healthy? Victor Oladipo. Once the Indiana Pacers get healthy, and Victor Oladipo gets back to, if he can get back to playing like he was an All-Star this year, and you look at Brogdon, then you look at Sabonis, Turner, they got some pieces and things because they can come at you in different ways with Miles Turner and Sabonis. They can play a different type of game. And then with the guards, Brogdon and Oladipo, because they're not big guards either. And so against Fred VanVleet, Kyle Lowry, that can be an interesting matchup. But again, other than that, yeah, you think Miami. I don't think Philadelphia and some of these other teams are going to really propose a challenge because of Toronto's depth and how they play, and they can play a bunch of different styles. But I think if it comes down to Milwaukee and the Raptors, and I've talked to a lot of Raptors players, they do not fear the Bucks. They respect them,
right?
But they reminded me that, Coach, who won the championship last year? Who did we beat in the Eastern Conference Finals? Who was down 2-0?
Yeah.
Who had a chance to put us down 3-0? And we came back and not only beat them, we swept them. So they keep sending that message to the Milwaukee Bucks, reminding them that, hey, all roads got to, yeah, we may have to come to Milwaukee, but y'all want what we got.
That's a good point. Toronto Raptors, they continue to impress. Their depth seems to be getting deeper, right, as guys go down.
That's the man.
Here we are, Olympic finalists for Team USA. Toronto Raptors tweeted this. Kyle Lowry, we spoke about his leadership. It's not just his points and his assists.
He's on the team.
I like it.
Done. He should be on the team.
We'll be back.